Most artists follow the rules or vanish trying to break them, but Damon Albarn quietly did the unthinkable. He rejected industry wisdom at every turn and ended up rewriting the blueprint for modern music. Blur, Gorillaz, and a Grammy-winning catalog were just the start. His boldest moves changed not just what music sounds like, but how it's made and performed, influencing icons from Beyoncé to Billie Eilish. How did one man, dismissed as an outsider, secretly change music forever? And why is the full story only coming to light now? Damon Albarn entered the world on March 23, 1968 in Whitechapel, London, into a household where creativity wasn't just encouraged, it was the family business. His father, Keith Albarn, managed the avant-garde band Soft Machine and spent his life immersed in experimental art and music. His mother, Hazel, designed theatrical sets, filling their home with sketches, props, and the constant hum of ideas in progress. The Albarns' flat in Leytonstone was a gathering place for artists, musicians, and free thinkers. Dinner conversations drifted from surrealist paintings to the latest in jazz and psychedelia. Damon grew up listening to everything from West African highlife to British folk, absorbing sounds from vinyl records stacked in every corner. Freedom was the rule, not the exception. There were no boundaries between art forms, no sense that music should sound a certain way or that a career should follow a straight line. Damon's early days were shaped by this atmosphere of possibility. He learned piano and violin, but lessons were never rigid. If he wanted to improvise, his parents encouraged it. If he wanted to experiment with tape recorders or build odd instruments from household scraps, they helped him find the parts. When the family moved from East London to Leytonstone, Damon found himself in a new world, one still shaped by his parents' bohemian circles but now overlapping with the working-class rhythms of suburban England. He attended Stanway Comprehensive School, where he was known as the kid who could play any instrument he picked up. Teachers remember him as restless, always questioning, never content to simply follow instructions. The school's music room became his laboratory, a place to test out new ideas and challenge what pop music could be. Later, at Goldsmiths College, Damon's world expanded again. The campus buzzed with experimental art and music, and it was here in 1988 that he met Graham Coxon, a like-minded guitarist with a taste for the unconventional. This meeting would set the stage for everything that followed. But before any band, before any label or chart battle, there was a childhood shaped by artistic freedom, a foundation that made rule-breaking feel like second nature. Seymour played to half-empty clubs across London, chasing gigs in the indie circuit with more scrappy ambition than direction. In 1990, Food Records offered a deal, but only if the band changed their name. They became Blur and landed in a studio, young and eager, but already feeling the squeeze of commercial expectation. The label eyed the American market, hungry for a British band to ride the grunge wave. Executives dropped hints and outright demands. More guitars, rougher edges, a sound that could pass for Seattle. Damon Albarn bristled at the idea. The band's first album, Leisure, came out in 1991. Neither a triumph nor a disaster, just another record in a crowded field. Blur spent months on the road in the United States, opening for bands who wore plaid and sang about apathy. The endless highways, the lukewarm crowds, the sense of being outsiders in someone else's scene wore them down. Albarn saw what the label wanted, another British band molded to fit an American template. Instead, he started writing songs that sounded defiantly British. Melodies lifted from the Kinks, lyrics steeped in the ordinary details of English life. The band's new material baffled Food Records. Early sessions for the second album, working title Britain vs. America, were scrapped after heated debates with producers and A&R. Blur released the single Pop Scene in 1992, a brass-heavy, mod-inspired track that barely scraped the top 40. Critics didn't get it. The label panicked. Albarn doubled down. He studied British pop history, drew on the mundane and the eccentric, and refused to chase trends he didn't believe in. The result was Modern Life is Rubbish, released in 1993. The album leaned into everything the label warned against: English references, irony, and a sound that owed nothing to grunge. It flopped in the US and underwhelmed at home. But for Albarn, it was a line in the sand, a refusal to let someone else decide what his band should be. The risk nearly cost Blur their career, but it set the stage for a breakthrough no one saw coming. Parklife arrived in April 1994, carrying none of the baggage of compromise. From the opening moments, the album radiated confidence. Brass, synths, and guitars swirling together in a sound that felt unmistakably British. The band leaned into the everyday, lyrics about dog racing, greasy spoons, and the oddball routines of suburban life. Damon Albarn's sharp observations painted a world both familiar and absurd, a love letter to the quirks of modern England. The title track brought in Phil Daniels, best known for his role in the film Quadrophenia. His narration, delivered in a thick Cockney accent, turned a simple stroll through the city into a celebration of working-class humor and resilience. Daniels didn't just lend his voice. He gave the song its swagger, its sense of place. It was a bold move, one that set Blur apart from their peers and made the song instantly recognizable. Expectations from the label were low. Executives predicted the album would be too niche, too British for mass appeal. Instead, Parklife exploded. It sold over 5 million copies around the world, earning quadruple platinum status in the UK. The album's artwork, bright, stylized, and unmistakably retro, became an icon in its own right. Radio stations couldn't get enough of tracks like Girls and Boys and End of a Century. Blur's look followed suit. Gone were the flannel shirts and grunge posturing. In their place, tailored suits, Fred Perry polos, and a wink to 1960s mod culture. The band's image, just like their music, was a conscious rejection of American trends. Concerts turned into mass sing-alongs. Suddenly, Blur weren't just a band. They were the soundtrack to a new British confidence. Media attention intensified. Parklife wasn't just an album, it was a cultural phenomenon. Newspapers and magazines began to frame Blur as the voice of a generation, the group that had captured the mood of a country ready to embrace its own story. For Damon Albarn, the gamble had paid off. The outsider approach, once dismissed as commercial suicide, had catapulted Blur to national icons and set the stage for the next great rivalry in British music. August 14th, 1995, two singles hit the shelves at the exact same moment. Blur's Country House and Oasis's Roll With It. For weeks, tabloids had stoked the rivalry, splashing headlines across front pages and turning a chart race into a full-blown cultural event. It wasn't just about music. Blur, the art school Southerners, faced off against Oasis, the working-class Northerners. The press framed it as a battle for the soul of Britain, a class war in 3-minute pop songs. Photographers camped outside record shops, capturing fans queuing for new releases. Radio stations played both singles back-to-back, fueling debates about which band truly spoke for a new generation. The numbers rolled in. By the end of the week, Blur had sold nearly 274,000 copies of Country House, outselling Oasis by 50,000. The victory was splashed across every newspaper. Damon Albarn, suddenly the face of Britpop, found himself under a spotlight brighter than ever. Every move, every interview, every lyric was dissected. The band's win wasn't just a chart feat, it became a national talking point, with politicians and comedians weighing in. Blur's label celebrated, but the pressure mounted. The media's appetite was insatiable. Headlines shouted about the Battle of Britpop, but behind the scenes, the frenzy left the band exhausted. Blur's triumph turned Britpop into a mass movement overnight. Singles flew off shelves, and music magazines sold record numbers. The rivalry dominated television and radio, with roundtables discussing the meaning of Britishness and the future of pop. For Albarn, the glare was relentless. He'd set out to make music that felt honest and local, but now every song was a headline, every gesture a statement. The same press that built him up began to question what came next. The celebration quickly blurred into scrutiny, and the pressure to deliver only grew heavier. Blur staggered into the studio in 1996, running on empty after years of chart battles and relentless touring. The band's nerves were frayed. Britpop had become a cage, every move dissected by tabloids and fans. Damon Albarn, restless and half amused, brought in a new demo, a throwaway acoustic tune with barely a working title. He called it Song 2. The joke was obvious to everyone. Write the most American, grunge-inspired parody possible, crank the amps, and see if the label would finally balk. Graham Coxon saw the potential for mischief and insisted they take the song to its loudest, most chaotic extreme. He dialed his guitar to a deliberately abrasive setting, slashing through the chords with a sound that was all teeth and fuzz. Alex James pushed his bass into overdrive, matching the racket. In the control room, producer Stephen Street set up 2 drum kits, one for Dave Rowntree, another for Coxon to bash at random. The opening beat was built from a loop, recorded with a wall mic and a Neumann U87 designed to sound small and boxy before the band crashed in like a wrecking ball. Albarn didn't bother with a fancy vocal booth. He grabbed an SM57 mic, jumped around the control room, and shouted the now iconic "woo-hoo." The energy was infectious. The whole track was knocked out in a blur of laughter and feedback, each take rougher than the last. The title stuck. No one bothered to give it a proper name. When the label heard the finished song, they didn't flinch. Instead, they loved it. What started as a prank became Blur's most recognizable export. Released in 1997, Song 2 exploded into the world. A 2-minute jolt that turned exhaustion into pure adrenaline. It blasted from car radios, soundtracked football matches, and ricocheted through video games and commercials. The band had reinvented themselves by mocking the very trends they'd been told to follow. Instead of burning out, Blur found new life in chaos, proving that sometimes the best way to survive is to stop caring what anyone expects. A London flat in the late 1990s became the unlikely birthplace of a new kind of band. Damon Albarn, still restless after Blur's reinvention, found himself sharing a home with Jamie Hewlett, the comic artist behind Tank Girl. Both were burned out by the music industry's obsession with image. Endless music videos on MTV, pop stars manufactured for maximum appeal, every move calculated for the charts. Nights in the flat stretched into hours of channel surfing and sarcastic commentary about the spectacle of it all. One evening, the conversation turned from complaints to ideas. If pop music was now about surface, why not push it to its logical extreme? What if a band didn't exist at all, at least not in the flesh? Hewlett started sketching characters on scraps of paper left on the kitchen table, a sullen singer with black eyes, a sneering bassist, a mysterious guitarist, a hulking drummer. Albarn, always searching for escape routes from rock stardom, saw a way to sidestep his own fame. The music could speak for itself, with cartoon avatars taking the spotlight. They called the project Gorillaz. Every detail was mapped out. 4 members, each with a name and a backstory. 2D, Murdoch, Noodle, Russell. Hewlett's drawings gave them life, while Albarn began writing songs that didn't have to fit any genre or expectation. The idea was radical for its time. No one knew who was really behind the music. The band could be anything, work with anyone, and never worry about being recognized in public. What started as a joke about the artificiality of pop quickly became a real experiment. Gorillaz wasn't just a reaction to the industry, it was a blueprint for a new kind of collaboration, where boundaries between music, art, and identity could be erased. Albarn and Hewlett tested their concept in secret, not knowing if anyone would take it seriously. But the logic was simple: if you can't beat the system, reinvent it entirely. Gorillaz arrived in March 2001 with an idea so outlandish it seemed destined for cult status at best. Instead, the debut album sold 7 million copies worldwide. The project's first single, Clint Eastwood, was built around a preset from a basic Suzuki keyboard, an accidental stroke of genius that became one of the most recognizable hooks of the decade. Damon Albarn didn't hide behind expensive gear or elaborate production. He leaned into simplicity, letting the melody carry the weight. The band's animated members, 2D, Murdoch, Noodle, and Russell, appeared everywhere. Late-night talk shows, magazine covers, even radio call-ins, all without anyone ever seeing Albarn's face. The music itself refused to sit still. Hip-hop, rock, and pop collided, and the world took notice. Del the Funky Homo Sapien, brought in for a guest verse on Clint Eastwood, gave the track its surreal, laid-back swagger. His cameo wasn't just a feature, it was a statement. Gorillaz could pull from any genre, any scene, and make it feel effortless. Critics who expected a novelty act found themselves scrambling to explain the project's momentum. The album shot up charts across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. What started as a satirical experiment became a commercial juggernaut. The animated band blurred the lines between fiction and reality, but the numbers were all too real. 7 million albums moved, with no traditional frontman in sight. For Damon Albarn, Gorillaz proved that music didn't need a recognizable face to connect. It needed ideas, and the courage to ignore every rule about what a band was supposed to be. Recognition from the music industry's highest circles arrived in 2006, when Gorillaz earned a Grammy Award for Feel Good Inc. The song, a collaboration with De La Soul, took home Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals at the 48th Annual Grammy Awards. For a band without a physical lineup, whose members lived only in animation and backstory, this was more than a trophy. It was a rare stamp of legitimacy from an institution known for its conservatism. Feel Good Inc. had already dominated international charts, but the Grammy win placed Gorillaz in the company of pop's most respected innovators. The official citation highlighted the song's inventive blend of genres and the seamless interplay between Albarn's melodic hooks and De La Soul's playful verses. Critics and peers alike praised the track's ability to sound both futuristic and instantly familiar. The win wasn't just about a single song, it was proof that Gorillaz' entire approach, crossing genres, blurring identities, inviting outsiders into the creative process, had moved from industry curiosity to a new standard for what popular music could be. For Damon Albarn, the Grammy validated a philosophy he'd been quietly pursuing for years: music as a space for collaboration, experimentation, and reinvention. No longer dismissed as a novelty act or a clever gimmick, Gorillaz now stood as evidence that breaking the rules could earn not just commercial success, but critical respect. The Grammy win gave Albarn leverage as a curator, opening doors to even more ambitious partnerships and setting the tone for a model of collaboration that would soon sweep through the industry. Gorillaz didn't just break genre boundaries, they built a revolving door. Over 50 guest artists have appeared across the band's albums, each bringing their own voice, background, and sound. Damon Albarn's approach wasn't to chase trends or assemble features for the sake of star power. He acted more like a curator than a traditional frontman, selecting collaborators for the specific color or tension they could add to a track. This wasn't a closed club of familiar names, it was a global network that spanned continents and generations. Snoop Dogg, Elton John, Lou Reed, Mavis Staples, Grace Jones, Bobby Womack, JPEG Mafia, and Danny Brown. Each was chosen for what only they could contribute, not to tick boxes or boost sales. The process often started with a rough idea or a half-finished beat. Albarn would leave space open, waiting to see what a guest might bring. Sometimes, lyrics were written at the last minute, shaped by the energy in the room. The sessions were rarely scripted. Instead, they thrived on spontaneity, on the creative friction that happens when artists from different worlds collide. Albarn called it a living ATM of ideas, always ready to change direction if inspiration struck. The result? Every Gorillaz album sounded unpredictable, each song a new experiment. This open-door policy wasn't just about variety, it was a philosophy. By handing over the spotlight, Albarn let Gorillaz become a platform for voices that might not otherwise meet. Hip-hop, punk, soul, electronic, African rhythms. No genre was off limits. The band's identity was defined by its lack of boundaries. In an industry that often rewards formula, Albarn's method proved that collaboration could be the engine of reinvention. The sheer number, over 50 contributors, wasn't a gimmick, but a statement. Gorillaz wasn't a band in the old sense, it was a laboratory, and Albarn was the scientist inviting the world inside. In January 2002, Damon Albarn landed in Bamako, Mali, carrying only a digital recorder, a handful of blank tapes, and a promise to listen. He wasn't there to headline or to export Western pop, but to work side by side with local musicians who had shaped their craft over generations. The project, eventually released as Mali Music, unfolded over a week of spontaneous sessions in living rooms, courtyards, and makeshift studios. Albarn recorded with kora virtuoso Toumani Diabate, Tu Mahni Diabate, and singer-guitarist Afel Bokoum letting their melodies and rhythms guide the process. There was no rigid plan, just a willingness to follow the music wherever it led. The sessions captured the pulse of Bamako: street sounds, laughter, late-night jams, and voices trading stories in French, Bambara, and English. Diabaté's choral lines looped over Albarn's minimal keyboard, while Bokoum's vocals drifted above hypnotic percussion. Damon avoided imposing his own style, instead layering subtle electronics beneath traditional instruments. The result was a record that felt less like a fusion and more like a conversation, each side shaping the other in real time. Ethics were always close at hand. Albarn insisted on direct payment for every musician, bypassing Western intermediaries and ensuring royalties reached Mali. Contracts were translated and discussed openly, a rare step in an industry often criticized for exploitation. In later interviews, Diabaté described the experience as genuine collaboration, one where respect, not appropriation, defined the exchange. The album's credits listed every participant, and proceeds funded local music schools and community projects. For Albarn, the trip was more than a creative detour. It changed how he thought about authorship and technology. Field recordings became building blocks for future Gorillaz tracks, and the spirit of open exchange would echo through every project that followed. Mali music wasn't just about bringing African sounds to Western audiences, it was about learning what it meant to share, to listen, and to let go of control. Plastic Beach arrived in 2010 with a vision as bold as anything Damon Albarn had ever attempted. The album conjured a world built from ocean debris, a synthetic island adrift in polluted waters, populated by lost souls and faded celebrities. Its songs drifted between orchestral grandeur and glitchy electronics, layering strings over breakbeats and synths. Albarn recruited collaborators from every corner: Snoop Dogg, Lou Reed, Bobby Womack, and the Syrian National Orchestra. Each guest added a new texture, but the theme stayed clear: beauty and decay, nature and plastic, all tangled together. The concept didn't stop at the studio. For the Plastic Beach tour, Albarn transformed Gorillaz' live shows into something closer to a multimedia installation than a standard concert. Massive screens stretched across the stage, streaming Hewlett's animated films and dystopian landscapes in real time. The band performed in front of these shifting visuals, sometimes silhouetted, sometimes stepping into the light. The effect was immersive. Audiences were pulled into the Plastic Beach universe, surrounded by images of swirling garbage, neon seascapes, and the band's cartoon avatars. Albarn pushed technical boundaries even further at Coachella that year. The set featured a rotating cast of live musicians and surprise guests, but the real spectacle came from the stagecraft. Animated characters appeared to perform alongside the band, interacting with the crowd and each other. Though the industry called them holograms, the effect was a sophisticated version of Pepper's Ghost, a 19th century illusion brought into the digital age by Musion Systems. For many in the audience, it was the first time a virtual band seemed to exist in the same space as flesh and blood performers. These shows weren't just entertainment, they were proof that music could be experienced as a living, evolving artwork. Albarn treated the stage as a laboratory, fusing animation, live performance, and narrative into a single, seamless event. The Plastic Beach era expanded the possibilities of what a concert could be, setting a new bar for technical daring and creative ambition in the music industry. Across the 2000s, music charts began to tell a different story. Songs credited to a single writer or a close group of bandmates became rare. By 2015, the average Billboard Hot 100 hit listed over 5 writers, up from just 3.5 at the turn of the millennium. This wasn't just about more hands on deck, it reflected a new expectation that pop music would blend styles, voices, and genres. Industry analysts trace a steady drop in the genre distance between collaborators, with hip-hop and electronic artists appearing on each other's tracks at rates previously unheard of. Streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music made these trends visible to anyone with an internet connection. Data scientists mapped genre tags and found that, between 2005 and 2015, the boundaries between pop, rap, R&B, and alternative music grew increasingly porous. The rise of curated playlists, often featuring Gorillaz tracks alongside Beyoncé, Post Malone, or Billie Eilish, reflected a listening public that expected surprise, not uniformity. Visual storytelling also moved from the margins to the center of pop. In 2001, most music videos were still promotional afterthoughts. By 2016, Beyoncé's Lemonade delivered a full-length visual album, while Billie Eilish and Post Malone released singles with tightly integrated video aesthetics. Industry reports counted a threefold increase in major label visual album releases from 2010 to 2020. Gorillaz' animated narratives, once considered a novelty, became a reference point. Music executives began to scout not just for sound, but for visual identity and narrative potential. Virtual acts too found a foothold. Hatsune Miku's digital concerts drew stadium crowds in Japan, and K/DA's League of Legends debut racked up hundreds of millions of views. While Gorillaz remained an outlier in terms of global sales, over 27 million albums sold, their model proved that virtual artists could command real-world audiences and commercial credibility. Credit analyses, streaming data, and industry reports all point to the same conclusion. What was once a rule-breaking experiment became a template. Collaboration, genre fusion, and visual narrative are no longer exceptions. They are the new rules of pop. In 2001, Gorillaz' debut album sold over 7 million copies worldwide, proving that Damon Albarn's refusal to follow music industry rules could reshape global pop culture. The documentary has shown how Albarn defied record label pressure in the early 1990s, chose British identity over American trends with Blur, and pioneered virtual bands and genre-blending collaborations that became the blueprint for artists like Beyoncé and Post Malone. Yet, some questions remain, such as the full extent of Albarn's influence on today's genre mixing movement, and how much was shaped by his collaborators behind the scenes. What all the evidence confirms is this: Albarn's insistence on artistic risk, collaboration, and authenticity broke commercial boundaries and redefined what pop music could be. As of 2023, he continues to create, with Blur and Gorillaz still recording and selling out stadiums. The legacy is clear. By refusing to compromise, Damon Albarn changed modern music, and his influence is still unfolding,